Today I've got some really exciting stuff to talk about, starting with Intel making some terrible decisions. GPUs are getting outdated really fast. AMD's monster CPU crushes it, and Nvidia's 4000 replacement has been spotted, and their pricing and performance could destroy AMD. Welcome everyone to Gamer Meld. First up for today, Intel's CEO has had some pretty wild comments. If you saw my last video, you know that it looks like Nvidia is actually working on some ARM CPUs for PC. We're talking consumer CPUs, and it's not just Nvidia. AMD is also working on ARM-based CPUs for the consumer market. We're talking they support Windows, all that good stuff, and Intel has now responded to this. As you can see right down here, it says Intel CEO Pat Gelsinger expressed limited concern over the potential impact of these new processors on Intel's dominant market position. It says, quote, ARM and Windows client alternatives, generally, they have been relegated to a pretty insignificant role in the PC business. Now, he does go on to say, quote, we take all competition seriously, but I think history as our guide here, we do not see these potentially being all that significant overall. Our momentum is strong. We have a strong roadmap. Now, of course, Intel, to a certain degree, whenever it comes to the public eye, can't start freaking out and going, yes, this is a major issue. We're worried. We're freaking out. I don't know what to do. This is not going to be good for us. But at the same time, just kind of pushing it off, acting like it's really not a big deal, is not a good sign. Simply put, Intel tried to do this with AMD's Ryzen, and look at what happened. AMD came in, completely crushed it, freaked out Intel, and they've gained a ton of market share because of it. Had Intel taken it a little bit more seriously, they wouldn't have had to rush out all these products with massive power draw and things like that, just trying to stay relevant. And of course, what he is saying historically is true when it comes to PC, but you would think of all people to be worried about this, it would be Intel, given they just lost a ton of market because Apple decided to completely forego their CPUs and run ARM entirely. And because of that, software that's on Apple PCs are likely starting to kind of work on applications that work better with ARM. So it'll likely make the transition on Windows a lot easier as well. Simply put, ARM has already taken a ton of business from Intel, and to think that they would completely brush this off as not a big deal isn't exactly smart. And next up for today, if you saw my recent video, you know that Alan Wake 2's PC requirements dropped, and they were pretty worrisome. We're talking minimum low graphics preset, 1080p, 30 FPS. They claim you're going to need at least an RTX 2060 or Radeon RX 6600. Not exactly old GPUs. And once again, that is the minimum here. In that original story, I laid out the fact that a developer actually discussed that, the 10 and 5000 series cards don't appear because only cards with mesh shaders are officially supported. Now, that was eventually taken down, but it looks like he is correct. As you can see right here, now this is a PSA and it is stating, hey, Alan Wake 2 does run on older GPUs, but that developer was obviously correct because when you go to play it on one of those older GPUs, it says this: your GPU does not support all the recommended features. This might lead to poor performance, visual glitches, or crashes. A GPU with the following additional features is recommended. Mesh shader. So we're talking hardware support for mesh shaders. And obviously the RX 5000 series as well as 1000 series aren't GPUs that have that. Now, as Tech Power Up states, it does run on older GPUs. Mesh shaders are not required, but they take a massive performance hit. As you can see right here, it shows the 5700 XT expected performance. What this basically means is where we would expect the 5700 XT as well as the 1080 Ti to be in terms of performance when compared to the other graphics cards and how it would normally perform in other games. And as you can see, we would expect the 5700 XT to be around 39.2 FPS with the 1080 Ti around 37.5 FPS. But their actual performance is way worse. You can see the 5700 XT's actual performance is 25.5 FPS. And this is, it's max settings, but 1080p. So it's not even able at max settings, just 1080p, to get at least 30 FPS. And then the 1080 Ti's actual performance is even far worse at 16.6 FPS. Basically, those minimum requirements really were no joke. Yeah, I'm sure if you move it down from max to maybe low, you might get enough FPS out of the 5700 XT to reach around 30 FPS, but this is not good at all. And it's definitely annoying because these GPUs really aren't all that old. We had started to see games using more and more VRAM, but this is even worse because even with GPUs with a ton of VRAM, they still are doing horribly here. I don't know, this really does stink. I would like to think at a certain point, because this is mostly new tech, mesh shaders, things like that, ray tracing, all of that stuff. So hopefully we do reach a point where all the GPUs for many years at least have the basic hardware requirements for these newer games. So the only difference is that, yeah, they're not going to do as well over time, but there's not going to be a massive drop off where we expect 39 FPS, but we're only getting 25. And next up, we have a new test for AMD's upcoming Threadripper CPUs. Now, this one is the Threadripper Pro 7985WX, so this is not the 96 core monster, but I'd actually argue that this really shows just how much better Zen 4 is over Zen 3 in Threadripper, because we can actually compare it to last gen. As you can see down here in the Geekbench benchmark, we have the 64-core Threadripper Pro 7985WX versus last gen's Threadripper 5995WX, which is also 64 cores. And as you can see, in single-threaded, it went from 1993 to 2599. We're talking a 30% increase in single core performance versus last gen. But of course, these are CPUs that come with a ton of cores. So if you're going to be buying them, you're definitely going to want to know about multi-core performance way more. And there it went from 18,205 to 24,780. So a 36% improvement in multi-core performance versus the last gen. And what's wild is that when we compare it to the generation before that, we're talking 63 and 64% performance faster. We're talking 15,106 to 24,780. So an absolute giant jump in just a couple generations, and really a pretty massive jump from one generation as well. And don't forget that there's actually a 96 core chip as well, so you can actually have one with even more cores for even more insane performance. And lastly for today, we have quite a few really big updates on Nvidia's upcoming super GPUs, and let's just say, well, they're really good. First up, you can see right here that the 4080 Super was actually found in the PCI ID repository. Now, for those who don't really understand this repository, it's basically for people to go put in leaked information as well as 100% confirmed information. But in this case, T4C Fantasy, who's actually the one that controls the GPU database over at Tech PowerUp, is the one who shared this. So I would argue that it's looking really good. He obviously has access to getting information on these cards much sooner than others, much sooner than the public. So if he's the one reporting on it, it's looking really good, but it actually doesn't stop there. We can also see that HW Info, it says the developer of the popular diagnostic suite HW Info declared the addition of the RTX 4080 Super as an upcoming change for the next version of the program. And as they state, it says typically diagnostic software developers receive information about forthcoming hardware well in advance. So we can definitely consider this listing as further proof that the 4080 Super is incoming. And with all of that said, we're now actually learning about both pricing and performance of these upcoming GPUs. As you can see right here in a new leak from Moore's Law is Dead, he actually goes over some of the performance. You can see we have the 4080 Super 16GB card, so it's looking like that 20GB number may not have been correct. Said push to perform 9 to 15% faster than the 4080. So not a great jump in performance, but hey, every little bit counts, especially when it could be priced as low as $999. You can see here he says that he's been directly told that the 4080 Super could get the $999 pricing. Not only that, but he did hear that they're planning to utilize 24 gigabit per second GDDR6X, so a bit faster memory there as well. Then we have the 4070 Ti, $799 pricing. That would be all right, and then you can see it's pushed to perform within 5% of the 4080, so the 4070 Ti would effectively become a 4080 for around the same price. Now, I will say this is, as they state, this is if Nvidia really wants to dominate with their super cards. This would really hurt AMD's 7900 series. But there is a chance, as you can see here, that it could actually be more expensive. Now, $1199, that's the price of the regular 4080 16GB when it was launched. Still, it's been a little while, plus it could actually be a little bit more, yet it could get just 5 to 10% more performance over the 4080. This, as you can see, is their we're not that worried super pricing. Then the 4070 Ti Super, not great pricing there. So it's basically where Nvidia ultimately has a couple choices here, but it's sounding like there really is a chance that they could move down to this $999 pricing. Once again, I'm directly told the 4080 Super could get $999. Now, I am saying this as if it's such an amazing thing, but we are still talking about $1,000 for a graphics card. I think it really goes to show just how absurd pricing has gotten for GPUs, but at the very least, it is still 9 to 15%, potentially 9 to 15% faster, while a couple $100 cheaper than the regular 4080. So when we compare it to their current GPUs, that is a really good price. But of course, like I said, I would love to see pricing go way down. It just doesn't look like it's going to happen. But at least for now, this is better, quite a bit better than what we currently have. So while that does it for today, if Nvidia does end up releasing the 4080 Super with a fairly okay boost in performance, but $200 cheaper, would you be on board? Let me know down in the comments below. And if you liked the video, please subscribe. And as always, have a great day.